Kids these days, teenagers, are unbelievably acute at detecting hypocrisy, or when we're not being real or we're not being honest with them. So we need to take that into account. And the example that we live out will make a huge difference on them. You know, we talk about having what we do represent what we say. You know, how long do you think it takes a teenager to turn off a parent who's telling him that, you know, smoking weed is terrible for him while he's having his sixth drink of the night? You know, they see that hypocrisy and they see that lack of realness very, very quickly. So the example we live out in front of them every day is extremely important. This is my oldest son when he was young. He was a great kid. He really was. We had a ball. I mean, he's been going to church since he was little. He went to a Christian school starting at kindergarten, I guess, which was, so you can see the timing, right? He was probably 4 when God found me in a very big way. And boy, am I thankful. We chose to put him in Christian schools, but public schools are totally fine. He was a great kid, smart, popular. But around middle school, things changed. And he started increasingly making decisions that took him in a dangerous path. So things changed. And I would suggest that if you have kids who are smaller, or even if they're in their preteens or early teens, kids don't always turn out the way parents would like. That's okay. You know, God is both all-powerful and mysterious in what he does. And I saw this with him, but I say this to lots of parents. The things that may drive you crazy, like a strong will, that therefore they're trying to assert their identity against you, may turn out to be leadership later. You know, a lot of things, they're trying to work things out as a teenager. So bear with them, give them some grace, but understand things will not go the way that you would plan it all the way. I mean, life doesn't go that way, generally. We live in a fallen world and things happen. So just understand that. And there are a lot of factors that play into that. And every kid's journey is different. And rather than force them into the journey you positively insist they should be on, I would suggest, with God's guidance, try to walk with them along their journey and guide them along the way. And being prepared helps you do that. And as you get prepared, you know, when they're younger, they're mostly playing video games or watching cartoons and then watching older things. Later, they're exposed to lots of things. And obviously, these days, they're exposed to lots of things. And you probably know this, but you need to take it into account. What worldview are they being presented with? Right? They're being presented with a worldview that has very few moral or spiritual principles. In fact, these days, it's quite the opposite. People who represent Christianity or morality often are attacked, in the public square. You know, they're being brought up in a culture where God can be whoever or whatever you want him to be, and that's okay. Whatever you decide is good for you. They're being brought up in a culture where there's one thing you should think about more than anything else, and that is yourself. Whether they're conscious of it or not, those messages are coming to them. So we have to be intentional about passing on our faith. And we have to understand that we're doing that in a time in the teen years when they're facing a lot of challenges. You know, I will use substance abuse and mental health issues as a way to have this conversation. Most of what we're talking about is how do you go on the offense, right? And raise a kid in the right way so that they love God and they have a good sense of self-esteem and things like that, because those things will protect them against this. But these days in the teenage years, you cannot be naive. We just can't. We have to understand it. And, you know, this series of 6 pictures a little bit tells a story, right? The first one kind of says, most teenagers face things that are going on in their lives. It could be sadness, it could be loneliness, it could be anxiety. Most of them want to fit in, and they may not fit into the crowd in the way in which they do. So they're going to have things that they have to deal with. And guess what? They don't like feeling bad. None of us do. So the temptation to feel better for a while is a pretty strong